welcome to the Beezies.
I'm Abby.
I'm Brittany.
I'm Jenny.
And I'm Mackenzie.
Remember the college days when you were best friends with your roommates?
We would come home and talk about anything and everything together.
We miss this phase so much that we decided we needed this quality roommate time again.
So welcome to the Beezies. Come over and get cozy with your new favorite roommates.
Welcome back to the secret lives of the Beezie wives and girlfriends.
Oh, I like that.
This is our new podcast where we talk about all of our secrets and confessions.
Do we not do that already?
Yeah, we've never once. I sometimes think about things that we overshare and I'm like, you know what? It's true. And I love it. Mm-hmm. No, this week we are going to be jumping right into our topic because we are all very excited about it. And we were like starting to talk about it before we started recording. We were like, got to cut ourselves off so we can share our thoughts with all of you people. But yes, we are going to be talking about first impressions and mainly the first episode of The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, which I'm very excited about. It'll be very fun.
I have just been watching this like constantly for the last 2 days because it just came out. Like, I love that we are doing this with perfect timing where it just came out and now all my thoughts are fresh.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Well, and by the time this episode comes out, it will have been out for like about a week. So hopefully none of this is a spoiler. We're also pretty much just going to talk about the first episode mainly and kind of just the dynamics of the show. So maybe spoiler warning, maybe not. I believe in you all that you can watch the first episode by now.
You know what I am nervous about, though, that I was thinking is, like, maybe, I don't know if you guys feel this, but I always get really nervous that my first impression opinions are wrong. So I just want to say,
that's
like,
fine.
These are kind of like the first things I've been thinking about, but then I almost always have to go to like TikTok to have my opinions confirmed.
I get that.
And if it's something that differs from mine and I can see the general consensus of everybody's different from mine, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm wrong. I'll change my opinion.
No, you could be right and everyone's wrong.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's
Wait,
literally a possibility.
how much of the show have you watched, Abby?
Oh, I've watched it all.
Oh, you okay.
Yeah.
So Jenny, you've only watched the first episode. Cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Just to disclaim that maybe my opinions might change in a week's time by the time this episode comes out.
Well, the thing that's so great with all of this, and the show kind of leaves on a cliffhanger, just a small one. And so I'm hoping...
A small one.
Okay, not a small one, but there's just one thing that's a cliffhanger, I feel like.
Yeah.
But I'm hoping that does mean there's a season 2. I would be really sad if they don't keep this show going. But I also, the thing that's nice with all of them being on TikTok is that I feel like the only reason maybe your opinion would change is because they post more stuff and we get more context. So
it's possible.
Anyways, I'm really excited. But to give a brief synopsis, in 2021, I believe Mom Talk started. So Taylor Frankie Paul is kind of Queen Bee. She just got moms together and we're like, let's just record some fun TikToks and post them and see what happens, kind of a thing. And it ends up blowing up and it becomes Mom Talk. And at one point there was seriously like 20 plus girls. But then, and Taylor has gone into detail about this. She talks about it on the show, but also on a couple podcasts, like Nick Vile's podcast is most recent that she talks about it on. But basically, she starts, her and a couple other couples to, I think one couple to start, her husband, and another couple start soft swinging. It's very gradual. You can go listen to her speak on how it actually started. I don't need to repeat all that, but that totally divides the group and just creates all of this drama, obviously. And then so their lives blow up. She gets a divorce. They're starting to film. Sorry, I'm laughing at Jacob being
It's Jacob like staring at himself in the camera.
You can't see him in my recording.
It's so funny
at himself.
I'm like
Okay,
trying to just
sorry.
keep going, and I'm like, I'm actually trying so hard not to laugh right now.
Ignore him, ignore him, ignore him.
My
I
ADD
can't.
brain can't do that. Anyways, so anyways, at this point, that all gets blown up, and Mom Talk blows up. Everyone's mad because Taylor posts a video exploiting them as swingers, and then a lot of them are like, "No, we're not swingers," but then they're also making content like baiting, like, "Oh, maybe we are," and like getting a bunch of clout and views from that. So it's like, and then she gets a divorce. She ends up dating this new guy. She gets arrested. Again, this is stuff all in the first episode, so I'm just like brief overview. But anyways, a year or so later, they all come back together. Not all of them. A good group of these girls come back together, and that's what the rest of the show is on. So the first episode is kind of that time period of right after the swinging scandal happens, her getting arrested, and then it time jumps to like earlier this year is what it seems like the first couple months of the year. So do you feel like I missed any like important stuff from? I feel like that's a very brief overview.
That
Yeah,
was
no,
good for me in the sense I don't know anything at all about them.
Cool.
So like I went into the show and I was like, I don't know who these people are.
Yeah.
So that helped me.
Well, and it's interesting because watching the show, there's 8 women, and they're almost every single one of them I actually knew like little tidbits about just from the last few years on social media, but I hadn't like put it together that that's who it was. So that was kind of an interesting part too, is like, I don't know. And like the ties, some small ties to like Real Housewives of Salt Lake City was interesting. So
Yeah. But I think the other part too that the first episode was irritating me about in general was when they talk about like who started Mom Talk, and these 4 are the original 4 in Mom Talk or whatever like that. Actually, I think what is more accurate is that it was Taylor and 2 other girls, Miranda and Camille, who were not a part of the show because they decided to turn it down. But they were the 3 that were involved in the swinging stuff.
Yeah.
And so it was the 6 of them, because them and their husbands. And yeah, I guess the 2 of them, like, they've been making TikToks and stuff, spilling all the tea about how, like, they didn't want to be on the show because Taylor was on the show, because it was going to be too much drama for them, their families, everything like that. Honestly, I hope that, like, after the first season, they change their minds and they maybe come back for like either season 2 or season 3, because
even like as a friend of kind of character.
Yeah, I think they're I understand how they don't want to do the show. I'm upset with the show for glossing over the fact that they were a part of it. Like, like I feel like you should have mentioned once.
Yeah. Well, what I found also interesting in the show is that they totally marketed off of the swinging scandal, and that is a big part of it, but it really isn't also. Like, after the first episode, it's like, that's kind of not even like what the show's about.
They're not current swingers. They're not people who are like actually swinging together. It was like something they did previously that they talk about and make jokes about, and Taylor's judged for, but like, other
Does
than
the
that,
show
I don't
talk
know.
more about it? About the swinging?
Not really.
Wow.
No, not really after the first.
And it's because none of the other women in the group were a part of swinging. It was just Taylor.
Yeah. And that's where I think, like listening to Nick's podcast, she talks about a lot. And then the one that I listened to, like, I want to say it was like a year and a half ago, was Weekly Trash, where she shared all of this then too. But she goes into like detail of it there on both of those.
I need that.
So you should listen to them, because it is really interesting to hear like the gradual progression from
how
like,
things progress, where you're almost like, oh, it's not weird, and then all of a sudden it's like,
it is weird.
This is happening.
yeah.
Okay, I want to just get your initial reactions to the show.
I love Taylor. I hate almost all of the husbands or boyfriends.
Yeah.
Not all, but a good amount of
the husbands
them.
we've seen.
The husbands you see,
like,
I don't like.
I think Demi's husband, Jesse's husband, like, they all seem really nice, and like showed up a little bit, but the ones you get like the interactions with, you're like, you're trouble.
Yeah. No, that's the thing is like Demi, Jesse, and Macy's husbands. I'm like, okay, I like you, but we also didn't get anything from you. And they seem like they're in like actual healthy relationships. Yeah. So I hate the men in their lives. Whitney is such a hard character because she obviously is the villain. And I think you get more of that as it goes on, so that like you may not have seen that as much yet, Jenny. But it also is like all over social media. But she's so hard because there's moments when I'm like, okay, I kind of get where you're coming from, but like, let's just take one step back and be like, maybe I'm the common denominator. If everyone's telling me I'm being mean, maybe I should listen. That's what I like really am bugged by her. So I don't know.
Yeah, there are a couple things I have critiques with like Whitney for, and that's the thing is like, I think she's really good at trying to, well, actually, I think she's kind of terrible at it, but she thinks she's really good at coming up with reasons to support why whatever decisions she makes or whatever is like the right one. Comes up with like her making the RSV video with her like kid, how she's like, I just wanted to do something fun because things were looking positive, but it's like, we're all also sort of seeing through that because it's not exactly true. And so it's like, no, you were trying to use his like sickness for clout. And like the same thing about like, well, I left the group chat because it's toxic for me. Like I need to set boundaries. It's like, I agree with what you're saying, but then you also follow it up with, and no one's reached out to me. And it just proves to me that you're like, I want them to chase me and make me feel important. Yeah. And beg me to come back, you know? Yeah. So it's like, she's really not doing a good job at like, I don't know. She has hidden motives all the time. And I feel like a lot of people see through that.
Yeah. My first impression, which I'm sure we'll like get into later, is I think it's a good reality show. Yeah. Like I think it's good like reality content. And I don't know, maybe this tames down or gets even more hyped up later. I feel like reading your text, it sounds like it gets more hyped up later. I really didn't like, and I thought it was like embarrassing. And this isn't just them. This is like a wider thing. But I didn't like them saying like, this is empowering. Like, are we fighting the patriarchy? Or like, are we women making videos? Yeah. Like that to me is like very...
It's like fake. Showy feminism.
Yeah. And it's not, like to me, like that's not real. There's like, it's rude to say it's not real feminism. But like to me, that's like, I think you're kind of just using... taking videos and like being sexy and things like that and trying to call that like empowerment, which maybe it is to them, but like I think there's like a deeper story in society to that, which like that's really not empowering, right? Totally not feminist.
They're like using keywords to like try to bring people in.
Yeah, they're trying to make it this empowering thing. Really, it's just they want to make money.
Yeah.
Right. And that's fine. Like, it doesn't need to be this, like, deep thing.
Exactly. Because, I mean, especially seeing some of the men, it really, like, it may be crazy that they are the breadwinners. And that is them fighting, like, their patriarchy. I think from, like, outside perspectives, it's like, is that actually that big of a deal? But, like, also once you add in the church level of it and... like who they're now seeing some of their husbands or knowing some of the background, it's like, actually, that kind of is a big deal that you're the breadwinner. And I'm sure that they kind of have a problem with that, honestly.
Yeah. And that was my issue too. Like when I was watching it, it was just so, to me, it was like so minimizing of what feminism and like fighting the patriarchy can be in the church. I'm like, there's like a lot of women out there and it's like, it's more than that, but I agree with it. Like, I think that's a good point of like, that's cool to like be the breadwinner. Money. Yeah, and it's more than like wearing scandalous clothes and like being different. Like, I think it's like going out there, like going to school, and like you said, like being the breadwinner, like doing all these things. And I feel like that wasn't touched on. Like those important parts weren't. It was just like buzzwords. And I was like, I really don't like this. Like,
Well,
it felt like they were basing it a lot on that in the first episode, and I was like, I don't like it.
I do think it gets I think it gets a little bit better, but not for all of them. Because, like, the thing that I'm thinking of is one of them starts a business, like, in this process and, like, launches that. And the other, like, Jessie is a very, like, she has built up her brand for Jay-Z styles and stuff. So, like, she's also a very successful businesswoman. But it's like they don't get into that enough for me. I agree.
Right.
Because I totally get where you're coming from. And I'm like, I would want a little bit more of that. They talk about it a little bit more for Macy because she launches her brand in the process of while the show is going. But yeah,
honestly, that might be like more of the fault of the show than
totally. Oh,
anything.
I agree.
Like,
yeah,
even the women may not they may not know entirely how to talk about it because they just don't have like the background to really have all the language to be able to communicate maybe the points that they need to. And then two, the time that you have on the show is so limited that the editors are probably just like, oh, let's put these important parts in or whatever, or ask them these pointed questions. And they're not really getting to like the meat of what it should be. So I can't entirely blame that on them. I will say, like, I do think it is so hyped up, this like mom talk group of women, we support each other, blah blah blah, and I'm like, I feel like you guys are really playing that up.
Like your coworkers.
Like, we are just here to support each other. Like it feels so much like a club almost, and it's like, who's the leader, who does this, like mom talk goes wherever. It's like you're kind of just a group of friends, like you're acting like it is this big like group or club. And it's not
totally
whatever.
I do just want to say, just like the first episode, I honestly thought that this was going to be kind of boring because the other girls that were swinging were not in this, so I just didn't know what it was going to be about. But the first episode, so impressed. We've got swinging, we've got divorce, we've got dating months after getting a divorce and getting pregnant soon after getting a divorce with your new boyfriend. We've got a husband that's been on dating apps talking to other women.
Their whole marriage.
Their entire marriage. Am I missing anything else? Like, and
her
then
mom
we've got
in the first episode.
Yes,
also.
we've got toxic moms. Like people breaking law of chastity, people breaking word of wisdom. Like there's like kind of this divide between like devout Mormons that are like kind of just breaking the rules and stuff. I think it's excellent.
No, it's
it's so interesting. And I do think as far as reality television goes, like I'll be honest, the whole like Whitney storyline is kind of like boring to me, but the whole like religion aspect, it's pretty accurate for the most part. Like I feel like a lot of women in Utah can probably relate to these women in some way. But there's been a lot of critiques of the show, and so I kind of want to like walk through each critique and kind of like get your feedback on them. Okay, critique number 1. A lot of people have been saying that the women on the show don't accurately reflect like a Mormon, like a righteous Mormon woman. They don't reflect the church. What are your thoughts?
Okay. Yeah. I have thoughts about this before the show came out and after. And somewhat differing. My biggest frustration with this, and me and Abby have actually talked about this already, but my frustration with people saying that is a lot of that critique obviously came before the show came out. And so it's like, one, you haven't even watched it, so you actually don't even know. And that's where I say, like, now having finished the whole show, I'm like, actually, it's a whole storyline that there, like, is a divide within the group itself of, like, saints versus sinners. So it's like, if you're saying that this doesn't represent Mormons because of a 2-minute trailer,
Yeah.
Okay, you're right.
And
like,
and specifically because of the swinging stuff. It's like we're not swingers,
Totally.
so it's so inaccurate. And it's
guess
like,
what?
oh, it's actually not a show about swingers.
Yeah, 7 out of those 8 women also weren't swingers.
Yeah.
So it's like that critique is just really interesting to me, just because it's like, one, it's not even really accurate to what the show is. But even so, that's kind of more my thoughts now. Before even watching the show, though, I'm like, and I agree with this, and this is what Abby and I talked about like a week or so ago, is if you are Mormon, you are Mormon. Like, doesn't matter how you're actually living your life. Like,
yeah,
it's a membership at its root. Like you are baptized.
And
it's
been really bothering me when people are like, oh, sorry, I just cut you off.
No, it's okay. You're probably going to say the same thing.
Yeah, like when people are like, oh, they're not Mormon, so like that's so annoying that they use the name Mormon because they're not even Mormon. And it's like, you watch the show and you're like, actually they all most of them, I think maybe 1 or 2 are like, I don't, but like they all identify as like active members of the church. And so you're gonna take that away from them? Yeah. Like, you're gonna tell them that they're not a part of that religion just because they drink every once in a while, or because they don't wear their garments, or they don't have the stereotypical Mormon look to them? Like, that's not fair to them for you to determine what their religion is.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and this is where, so Macy posted a TikTok, and this is the one I was going to talk about before the show came out, like a couple days before, basically just kind of responding to the discourse and everyone being like, because there have been petitions to like get the show canceled and people being like, let's all band together and not watch it. And it's like, as someone who is active, quote unquote, for myself, like I go almost every week. I had a calling up until like a couple weeks ago. And like I would consider myself fairly active. I'm like, it's actually really refreshing to see something like this because of the complexity of being in the church. And it's way more comforting to know, oh, there are people out there who are more similar to me. It's not everybody, because I know it's not all the people I'm sitting next to at church on Sundays, but there is complexity in it. But anyways, Macy's TikTok, she basically says like, I've been like hearing all this discourse, and she's like, I actually am really actively Mormon. Like, I have a temple recommend. I have a calling. I go to church every Sunday with my family. Like, I don't do a lot of the things that you guys are critiquing and saying I do. And basically just saying like, watch the show before you judge all of us, kind of a thing. And also don't even judge us. Like, what's the point in doing that when you don't know the full story? So
yeah, I love that they give like a wide range of members. I feel like from somebody who's like way more devout and like active to somebody who's like maybe has a background in this and maybe is inactive, or like doesn't know where her faith is. Like, they have 8 people all within that range. And I also think it's interesting that kind of sometimes the women are going back and forth within that range as well. Like, Taylor is having like a kid with her boyfriend and moving in with him, but at the same time is like, I'm very committed to my religion as well, but like I also don't want to be rushed into marriage. So like I think that is a very refreshing part of it. And as much as like I understand that we have this perfect image of what like a average Mormon is, but I think back on like my interactions with those average Mormons, and they were always at church events. Like, it was a Sunday relationship. And so it's like, I actually have no idea what their lives outside of church is like. Of course, they're going to seem way more like holy on Sundays than they are like any other day of the week. Like,
totally.
And that's like my mom's friends, like my young women's leaders, like all of them could have been living similar lives. And I had like, you don't know. So I think that's like the interesting part of it, and why I wouldn't necessarily say that like this isn't a bad representation. Like, I think it's also a great representation of Utah culture, Mormon Belt culture. Like, if you grew up in Idaho, Utah, or Arizona, a lot of this is like so relatable. So I don't like, I think the people who like don't want to watch it because of that, like, you should just give it a chance, you know, because you might be surprised.
I feel like I need to watch more to see like everyone's personalities and like learn about their level of
Yeah.
active or whatever. But I think the critiques are valid in the sense that, yeah, this isn't what the church and Mormonism represents. Like, that's
Yeah.
not what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think for the most part, when like most people that are like active, quote unquote, aren't being like this, but I think that's fine. And I'm also like, this is a reality show. Like, what do you know how boring
Yeah.
it would be if you like showed the like
Yeah.
Yeah.
70% of people that are active members and like don't act differently?
Totally.
But because like you guys are right, like there's so many different levels,
Mm-hmm.
and I think a lot of people don't realize that.
Yeah.
But like I think it's true to say like it's not represented. Like I genuinely don't think I genuinely think that most people like that are going to church every Sunday aren't like this, I would say. But that's
But
fine.
it's not like they don't
Yeah.
exist.
Yeah, and it's not like
Yeah.
they don't
Yeah.
exactly. And I'm like all of that, like me and Brittany, I wouldn't say like I relate to them, but I do relate to them in the sense that like
I feel like I do.
like like I didn't grow up in that culture, so like it's not
Yeah.
the same for me. But like I'm like them in that sense. Like I dress how I want. Like I don't know, that type of stuff. But yeah, I mean I think those critiques are accurate in a way. Like, but I think
Yeah.
everything you guys say is true, where it shows that there's levels
Yeah.
to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's like shut down the show. Like I think that's stupid. Like
A little too dramatic. I will say, I think Mormons are actually great at reality TV show because we make drama out of
Anything.
everything.
Oh my
Like,
gosh,
I
anything.
love how literally within the first few episodes, it's like drama about the fact that this person ordered wine or like is having a drink at a party versus like not. Normal people would just be like, oh, you're having wine, whatever. Like, never even mention it. But the fact that it actually is a conversation is so funny to me because that's also so accurate.
Going to the critique, so it's interesting, we just had that episode about like part 1 and part 2 of our lives, and I feel like part 1 me and part 2 me are like coming together on this and like clashing, because part 1 me, like the part of me that was like active in the church, like I tried my best to follow the rules, and like if I messed up, I like went through like the steps you're supposed to go through to like repent or whatever. And it can be very invalidating when you see other people like break the rules and be like, yeah, so what? Like,
Yeah.
I feel fine about it. But then part 2 me is like telling part 1 me, okay, you're just projecting. But also, as I've gotten older, and even still now, the amount of like active people in the church that I know that like regularly drink or don't wear their garments or whatever, like, so like everyone has a skeleton in their closet, like
Yeah.
and especially like in your 20s, I feel like.
Yeah.
So I don't know, it is just like, it's so interesting. And that's the thing about like why like Mormons make great reality TV, and especially these like influencers who are like, they're not super duper famous, like, so they're willing to kind of like whore themselves out a little bit, like some of the stuff that we see, especially later on in the season. Oh, I want to talk about so bad, but I don't want to spoil. I'll just say that there's a dynamic between a wife and a husband where the husband is being very controlling,
Yeah.
and I'll just say it. Sorry, it's spoiler alert. But a wife wants to, or there's like a surprise event in Vegas. They're in Vegas, and the girl's like, okay, it's a surprise. We're going to Chippendales, and this girl is like, oh my gosh, like I don't know about this, and like her husband is pissed that she's going to Chippendales, and she leaves. She doesn't even stay for the show. But her husband texts her basically saying like, I want to be married to someone that has morals, like how, you know, how could you, like threatening their marriage and stuff. and saying like, I don't even know who you are. Meanwhile, he is gambling until 1 a.m.
Yeah, that was shocking.
The juxtaposition of that is wild.
So hilarious.
And like, and her friends call him out in front of her. They say like, this is what is wrong with the church, and like, this is misogyny. He's a narcissist. And I don't know, that whole dynamic, especially like adding the church into it, it's so interesting. And I think anyone who like is Mormon, even if you're a Mormon that's like, I don't want to watch the show, I feel like in some way you can understand or relate to one of the storylines.
Yeah.
So, no, I 100% agree. And I think that's why it's so cool that they really do have, like we're saying, like all the levels of Mormonism, because you will find someone or something that you relate to. And I think that's what is like cool about the show. So
yeah, like you've got a girl who she wears her garments most of the time, like,
and she talks about it.
Yeah.
And then like other people are
She
like,
had a baby blessing on the show.
I love that the baby blessing was part of that. I found that a hilarious storyline as well, that some people were uninvited, and like that is also again so accurate, because it's like, oh, at this party this person drank, and now I don't want to invite them to my baby blessing because it needs to be like all about this baby and so holy, and like that's not how I want to start off. It's like that happens. Like people get uninvited to those things because of that reason, and groups get separated between like saints and sinners in the same way.
That storyline was wild, because here's the thing. She was so in the wrong for uninviting them, but I honestly do think it was a little unhinged of them to be drinking at that party.
Oh, for sure.
Oh,
that was so weird.
Like I honestly thought that was pretty disrespectful, because they weren't at like if they were at the friend's house, sure. Like if, for example, if I threw a party and one of you guys brought a flask and it was at my own home, I genuinely would not care, because it's my house. Now, if I were at Scott's parents' house and one of you did that, I would be pissed
like,
at you.
You would never.
Like, no, I would genuinely be so mad. And I would be like, that is so disrespectful. So that's I totally get that. Because I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, you can't go through 2 hours of a party. Like, I get that this is not your type of party, but you're not the one hosting it.
Right.
Like, honestly, if I threw a party, I would probably have something for you guys to drink anyways. So it's like,
well, and
but then
like
uninviting, I'm like, oh, that was not the right thing to do.
And it's that kind of stuff that I'm talking about, like, makes such good reality TV show, because it's like a newly ex-Mormon person, or like somebody who drinks occasionally and is comfortable with it, gets so excited for every opportunity that they can like drink with their friends. So it's like, it makes so much, like, you couldn't have held it off at his parents' house for like 20 minutes. Like, go do an after party somewhere else. Take this to your place. Like, you don't need to do it at the parents, but the like the like part cool inside of you that wants to do this so bad cannot hold back. So that part is so funny about it. And then also, yes, like the discomfort of everybody else from the group. And it's like almost like everyone's being pressured and like, what do we do? And I don't know. It's just like so dramatic. And I just love, and you just don't get that in normal TV, I feel like.
Yeah. Another thing that I really liked about how they had this show set up, and this is just like, this isn't a spoiler at all, is they move on from each thing very quickly. Like it's quick paced. Like comparing to Real Housewives, for example, where like one fight or one trip will be 4 episodes, whereas this, they'll have like major things, like 5 major things in one episode. And I'm like, I like the quick pace of it, because it just keeps it more entertaining, I feel like.
Yeah.
And then you get so much more. Like, I feel like I've watched Real Housewives seasons where I'm like, there's 3 things that happened this whole season. Whereas this, I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't even remember everything that happened.
I feel like with the 8 episodes, a lot still happened, and it was like a good pace. I could have done more because I liked it so much.
100%.
But like with the Kardashians, sometimes I would watch like 8 episodes and then I'd be like, what did I just watch that whole season
Like, I just
for?
watched one thing.
Yeah, like that was pointless. And so I love like the amount that they're sharing and the drama, and like I just love this. I love that it like also shows how women just create so much drama that doesn't even have to be there in some ways, like with Whitney and everything like that. Like she is such an instigator, and it's crazy, I think, to watch her like not show up to her best friend's launch party, but then show up to this person's birthday party who doesn't even like her, but she just wanted to let everybody know that like she's still there and she still wants to be their friends, but
That
like
part was
also
wild.
I don't care about you. I don't want to be your friend. Like, I don't know, just the way that people are so dramatic.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Mackenzie, what were you going to say?
No, I was gonna ask another question. So
Yes,
Okay, I
yes.
have one last thing for the critique. This is going to sound
I'm ready.
like for the people's critique of like the Mormonism thing. This is going to sound so staunch Mormon of me, but I do feel, and I'll explain more. I do feel like it's a like somewhat disrespectful. Only the like temple scenes
Yeah.
or like the weird like holding hands in front of that in front of the
Like
temple.
the
And
promo stuff.
Yeah. And I get why everyone outside who's like not who don't know these things, like everyone who's Mormon and very active, I totally see why they would be like, this
Yeah.
is not good. Because like even watching just those beginnings part, I was like, oh, like that's kind of crazy. It's like the matching blue coats and stuff.
Yeah.
But I'm also like, the thing that people have to realize is like these are people's lived experiences, and again, reality TV, they're trying to like get the world to watch
Totally.
like
a show
by
about
making
Mormons.
yeah,
They're
and,
gonna
like,
and they live in Utah where there's
Yeah.
a temple on
Yeah.
every street. Of course,
Yeah.
they're gonna take advantage of that.
yeah. So
the
that's
blue
the
coats
only
as
thing.
like a stylistic. I don't
That was-
understand the blue
yeah.
I
coats.
don't think it was a cute choice.
Yeah.
I do understand the criticism behind like calling it Mormon wives, and like, yes, very clickbaity. Yes, they're trying to get viewers. They're trying to gauge interest. That's what
Exactly.
the job of the like of producers is to like promote a show and name a show and get it to be so that people want to watch.
Yeah.
And I don't like the argument saying that it's disrespectful, because I don't think disrespectful is the right word. I do understand how it makes people uncomfortable and they don't like it, but to then criticize and say, well, that's just disrespectful to the church. Like, the church is disrespectful to other people, to like people who have left the church, but yet like
Right.
you just calling something Mormon wives, which is accurate to your identity, like is like that's the part that of that critique that I am always just like frustrated by.
Yeah.
But like I do understand how like, yeah, people aren't going to like that. People are going to feel like maybe their identity is being used to grab other people's attention, because it's like, if I was a devout Mormon and hated the show, I'd be like, you're using something that's so special to me as a way to like poke fun and like get views, and that
Totally.
hurts. Like, I'm not saying it's not hurtful.
I think it's a
Or,
little
like-
insensitive, maybe.
Well,
Maybe,
I think like disrespectful can be used for every aspect almost, except for like the Mormon. I think you can use disrespectful when it's someone who thinks there's like sacred things to them, but like
Yeah.
the word
Yeah.
Mormon wives, I'm
Yeah.
like, that's not like the word Mormon and LDS
petty.
isn't sacred. like,
right.
Yeah.
to you.
Right.
Yeah, and that's where I do
And-
get it with like the temple part of it, because that is very sacred for a lot of people, and so it can seem like, I don't know, just like shocking almost. I think it would have been worse if they were like making fun of or
Right.
like making light of different things, especially that like
Yeah.
you do in the temple, which they don't do. And I think
Yeah.
actually like this is more when you get through the show, but when they do talk about different like practices that we have or different things, they're actually like explaining it in a very general way, like so anyone could understand. But that's also very respectful, I thought. Like I didn't like when they were explaining baby blessings, for example, I was like,
Yeah.
oh, they're explaining that in a very like respectful way, I think. So I don't know. I for me, it was more of just like, it's kind of boring to see a shot of the temple every 5 seconds.
Right.
So that was like, honestly, my only thought of it. But like, I personally didn't feel like it was super disrespectful, just because I don't think they were like making fun, I guess I should say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I
it
think
wasn't
the
Like,
other
I
part-
wasn't offended.
Right.
And
I think
and like,
the-
sorry.
go ahead.
Oh, and just like we said, like there are girls in that group who are very active, some that are like less active or whatever. There is that spectrum, and like once you're Mormon, you can decide like what your relationship is with the temple.
Totally.
So if you're okay with standing in front of the temple in a creepy, ugly ass blue coat, like
The blue coat was the most
that-
offensive part.
that's yeah,
Right,
that's your
honestly,
prerogative.
literally.
Like it represents what the show is about.
Yes,
Totally.
that's what I'm saying. Is like everyone has their like, you can do that, and
Yeah.
I think
Totally.
the only like not even issue. I think all these people that are like, oh my gosh, this isn't representative. Those are people who aren't like, kind of like you said earlier, Kenzie. Like, they're not trying to get famous, and they personally wouldn't be willing to do that.
Totally.
Yeah.
And like, that's them. Like, that's you. Sorry.
Yeah.
Like, whatever.
Yeah.
I think the other thing that might throw people off a little bit is that when they do talk about some church things, like in the interviews and whatever, they it feels maybe a little like void of the spirit, which to a group that like is very spiritual and spirituality is very important, and like they have their testimony and they share their testimony a lot and stuff. It's like more matter of fact than like, let me share my testimony in these interviews.
Totally.
So it's like, yeah, in the Mormon church, we have this thing that's a baby blessing, and it's like an opportunity for us to bless the child, blah, blah, blah. But it's like not them sharing their testimony of like,
Yeah.
I have a testimony of baby blessings
Yeah.
and that they are so good for the child. Like,
And
you
again,
know, and so
how
maybe
boring.
right, boring.
That's not
also,
reality
like,
TV.
Ew. So I think
Ew.
I think part of it is like seeing certain things in your life be shared from like a outside perspective feels way weirder as well. And so you're gonna watch it and you're gonna be like, oh, I don't like the way that they're sharing that because I wouldn't say it that way. But it's like, just because you don't like that
Yeah.
particular way doesn't mean that what they're saying is not true.
Yeah.
You know?
The other critique I wanted to dive
Yeah.
into is, I don't know if you guys have been seeing this like Facebook post that's been going around. So in the trailer, there's a part where they talk about like being a Mormon wife and how like you're raised to be a wife and a mom and be a
Oh,
good
yeah.
wife and like serve your husband and stuff. Well, there's this like viral Facebook post going around saying that like that this isn't true. If you were taught that, it's your parents. It's not the church teaching you that. Like church leaders have always encouraged men and women to go to school and like provide for their family. What is your take on that?
My first thought, genuinely, if you aren't taught that, it's because your parents
Yes.
like
Taught you
tried
something
very
different.
hard not
Yeah.
to teach you that. Like
So
the
quite the
church,
opposite.
yeah, like it definitely did. Maybe not now,
I
like
think it's
currently right
less.
now, but like us growing up, like if you read through our, what were those things called, personal progress?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember looking through that in college because I was writing an essay about that, and I was like, holy moly, like this is all about becoming a good
Yeah.
wife. Like, so wrong.
Yeah.
Also, how many general conference talks have
Exactly.
I listened to about like a woman has like divine purpose and like being a mother is the most amazing like thing ever that you could become and blah blah blah, like in general conference, which is considered doctrine. So sure, maybe in that talk somewhere they also talk about how like, yeah, furthering your education is important too, because like being educated like helps you in these ways. But then
what if your
also
husband dies?
be a mother. Like, you
Yeah.
know, it's always been that is like the most important. And like I had lessons in church about being a mom and like in young women's and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's simply just a culture thing and like, oh no, the church never pushes that on people. Like, I think it's culture, sure, to like get married young and have kids, but like that culture is supported by doctrine as well.
Right. Well, and I think to some degree, like I think Taylor in the show said like, oh, we're like raised to like serve our husband's every need. And I can see like,
I
okay,
think
like
that's
that's a little,
dramatized.
yeah. And like that's probably
Yeah.
like the producers trying to get something out of
Mhm.
her or whatever. But like it, like kind of what you said, Abby, like the culture comes from something.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
like it reminds me of like, okay, so in the US, like the average age for women is like 28 or 29.
Like
To
29.
get married.
And yeah, for
Okay.
to get married. And Abby, I remember like in college you did a project on like Mormon women getting married, and like the average age for Mormon women is like 21, or it
Yeah,
was
it's like
21
so
or
much younger.
and it's not bad to get married young, but it's like, okay, like let's ask ourselves why, like just out of curiosity. It's because it's pushed so much, like,
Mm-hmm.
and not saying that's a bad thing, it's just is what it is.
Yeah. And then I
And-
also want to like mention too with that, like the other thing I've always heard is, well, yes, the age is so much younger, but the divorce rate is always so much less, right?
Yeah.
No.
Go and watch
First-
episode 7 and tell me
Right.
why.
Like, first of all, yes, but also like people are getting divorced more nowadays because of like they're realizing that toxic relationships are not okay. But truly, it is because like women and people in like men and women really are encouraged to make toxic relationships work because one, you're sealed to them for eternity. Two, for your kids. Like even with Taylor being so encouraged to marry Dakota, it's like the
That was
shame
so
that I
crazy.
feel like that was in that conversation put on her was
And her
crazy.
her mom doesn't even like Dakota, and she's
No.
like pressuring her to marry
And she's
him.
like, "Well, you should have thought about that before you got married or before you got pregnant." And it's like sometimes we don't plan these things. Sometimes they just happen. But like why should I be forced into a relationship that I don't necessarily want or am sure about simply because I'm having a kid? So like my point is, what's my point? Oh, my point is that like I don't necessarily think that point is accurate either of saying, well, divorces are lower, because it's like, okay, maybe divorce rates are lower, but like what's the percentage of happy marriages? Because like I've had experience with people who have gone through traumatic things where you should have gotten divorced over, and they were like, but we need to work it out because we committed to each other. And it's like, I don't know if that's a good reason. Just saying, you know?
Well, and that was like watching this show has like made me realize kind of like some like lingering ideas that I have that like I got from the church. Like the fact that like when someone is sealed, I still like, well, I don't believe in it. I still take it so seriously. And like I was texting you guys earlier about how like there is a part where the women are talking to one of the girls about her husband, and they bring up some concerns about the husband. And I was kind of like, that's so rude that they're like criticizing her husband in front of her, because I saw like her husband as like an extension of her. I saw them as like one. And like, so like if you're critiquing her husband, then you're critiquing her. And so it's interesting, just like, I don't know, the show, it like it's bringing out some like thoughts and like some like hidden like beliefs that I didn't realize that I had before.
I didn't text about this mainly because I was getting ready, but at first I kind of like was a little shocked too, mainly because they were coming on so strong and direct, and I feel like I was just like caught off guard. But until they started like really reassuring her, like this is because we love you, basically, and like being really kind to her, I felt kind of the same, Kenzie. And I think it's also partly just because like, at least for me, what I kind of identified was like, it's such a sticky area to talk about someone else's marriage. And so it's like there's part of it that's like, oh, I'm saying this to you because I love you and like I want what's best for you. And so that to me was like, because I was like, if I was like concerned about one of you guys, I would I would have to be really, really worried to actually say something to you, mainly because I'm like, I don't actually know what's going on behind closed doors. Like, I'm just getting a glimpse of it. And so that kind of reassured me as I was like, this is obviously really bad if they are going to her and being like, hey, this is not good. Like, you should leave him, basically. But it is like, I don't know.
Yeah, I also wonder if like that's kind of, or I feel like that's a hard conversation to have with somebody who is in that position of being manipulated by somebody, because I think it can also feel as though maybe, okay, you're not attacking me for being a bad person, you're attacking my husband, but you are sort of attacking me because you're saying that I am victim to this manipulation, that I am believing it, and
I'm
like
not seeing it.
I'm not seeing it, or, you know, and that almost is kind of like a little insulting when you're in that situation and you're trying to make it work and you're trying to like believe them and work through it and see if they're going to be a changed person. And you're like, I kind of just want my friends to believe me, and they're not. They're like, no, you're wrong. Like, that's not an easy thing to hear as well. Being like, oh, okay, like I am being manipulated. Like, no one wants to admit that.
Yeah.
So I think that's another part of it as well, is like she's slightly, I wouldn't say she's being attacked, but like she can feel attacked as if like I'm stupid, you know.
How much time do we have left? Do we need to wrap up?
We probably should wrap up.
Okay.
Are there any final thoughts?
Yeah, and I was going to ask final thoughts, and who is your current favorite? Who are you rooting for the most? I will say I am rooting for Jen the most.
I do
and if you
love Jen.
I'm rooting for her, and it's funny because she's the complete opposite of me, because she's the most active.
Yeah.
But I think that kind of makes sense why you'd be rooting for her, you know?
And I'm not saying I want her to leave the church or whatever, but like she's in a very tough spot and I'm rooting for her.
Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes the people who are the most active are also the ones struggling the most, and it's like compensating. So you also like never know where she's at. Just saying.
Yeah, that's true.
Not putting anything on her. I'm just saying maybe you relate because you're like, at certain points I have been this way.
Yeah. I think my main final thought is that I just really want this show to keep going. And I genuinely think anyone, regardless of your activity level in the church, can enjoy this show. Because it is just like, I don't know. I think they did a really good job of it. I really want there to be more seasons. It's so successful. I'd be really shocked if there's not. Like, I think it literally is already #1 in 24 hours or something. I really like Macy. I think I relate to her in different ways. But I also just think like as a person, like I really like that it almost feels like she plays both sides, but I think the difference is that she calls everybody out on their shit. So it's not just like, oh, I'm with you, so I'm going to agree with you and make you feel happy. It's like, hey, this is messed up what you did. Yeah. We're still friends, but like, I'm also going to call you out on it. But she does that with everyone. So it's very consistent.
Yeah. I'd almost like describe it as being the glue as well. Like, she's kind of, sure, she plays both sides, but I think she's the glue that brings both sides together. And she's not being manipulative in the way that she plays both sides. She's being like very honest and genuine about it. And so I think she's like a big reason why everybody can continue to stay as a group.
Totally.
But I love, I want to say Demi because that's the way that it's pronounced, but all of them say Demi, so I'm just going to say what they say.
I really like Demi also.
Demi and Jesse look the exact same to me. I still can't.
I can't. And I also, like, their voices are the same.
And all the blonde women too. I'm having a hard time.
They do. They all look exactly the same. It is the Utah look, 100%, with the long extensions and the curled hair and blonde and
the lips.
Your lips. I think Demi kind of looks like Kendall Jenner, or reminds me of Kendall Jenner in some ways.
Kendall.
I could see it.
Yeah, I
The
just want to
vibes
know
I
if you
can
guys
see.
agree.
I don't
Watch
think
it
she
back and
looks
see.
at all like her.
No, maybe just like the way she talks and her mouth.
Mannerisms,
I don't know what it
yes.
is. Mannerisms, something about it is just speaking Kendall to me.
Yeah.
Anyways, I love her. I like how she's kind of assumed this like voice of the group, sort of leader role. And I think she's really, I love how like honest she is with everybody. And I will say, I hope that like for next season, I know Taylor was like pregnant for this season and dealing with the arrest and everything like that. I want Taylor to be more a part of like the drama as well in some ways, and like involved in the group in the next season. Because I think I love Taylor after all of her interviews, after her TikToks. I just like, I do love her, and I want to see her be just like more involved in it, and I want to see more of her. So
I agree.
I don't know anyone enough yet, or like anyone yet to root for anyone.
Yeah.
I honestly only know Taylor's name. And my final thought is just, I don't know. Currently, I want to see the rest of it. Like, currently to me, it's just a like reality show.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It'll be cool to see more, I guess. Like,
I'm excited to hear your thoughts later on.
Yeah. Binge it today.
yeah.
We'll do a part 2 to this.
yeah.
And we can get into it. Honestly, maybe this would be super boring for other people. I think it would be really interesting once you have finished it, Jenny, and once it has been out a little longer, to like literally go into like each main drama and just see like what you guys' thoughts are, because I feel like some of them we would maybe disagree on like things. So I don't know. I would like to do that.
I'm
was right.
always down to talk about like Mormonism. Like, there's just so much,
Yeah.
everything going on.
There's so much. So, well, this was so much fun. I hope you guys do watch this show. If not, maybe this episode will suffice. But come back every Monday and follow us on TikTok, YouTube, Instagram is the other thing, at the Beezie Podcast. I was like, what's that thing called? Have a great rest of your week. Goodbye.
And bye, friends.